Okay, my friend. So I told you this morning in a daily brief that we're going to talk about what's going on with these bombings around military recruitment centers, and I was going to try to get a hold of Greg, and he had some inside knowledge of what was going on through his contacts there in Ukraine. So Greg, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you, Prof. It's a joy to be here. And thank you also because you're helping me today. I'm out running and gunning and unable to actually work on content myself. And I'll be putting this up on my channel as well. So thank you for helping me out. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. I'm glad to. I mean, this is synergistic here. We're getting to find out what's actually happening. So tell me what you understand about what happened. I carried this story this morning because I try to provide full news, not just, hey, Ukraine's
hmm
doing great, Ukraine's doing awesome. That's like, no, this was a bad thing that was happening. That it looks like there were multiple places where there was an attack of some sort, some kind of explosion at a military recruitment center. And I mean, obviously people don't want to be forced into mobilization, and I understand that, but uh, tell me what kind of context you can bring to this.
Well, the context is simple. I actually was in a dinner meeting with a person who has responsibility in this area, um, police, military, and high-ranking person, and they actually explained it all to me, even prior to the bombing last night in Pavlograd. So basically, over the last 10 days or so, we have had different strikes in mobilization recruitment centers through basically an IED.
Hmm.
And last night was Pavlograd. A couple of nights ago, it was Rivne. Before that, it was Dnipro. Before that,
Hmm.
it was Kiev. It has happened in multiple places over the last 10 days or so. And now there is a pattern that is coming. It's almost like a cyclical pattern. And on top of that, 3 hours ago, as of the time of this recording, um, the Ukrainian security services were able to intercept two bombers going into the police department in
Oh.
Rivne. So that's news you will be seeing coming out. So this is basically work of sabotage,
Hmm.
and it is work of Russian infiltration into the Ukrainian recruitment process to bring
Hmm.
fear. What you have to understand is
But
mobilization is a little,
these are, hold on one second.
yeah.
These are Ukrainians doing this, carrying this out.
These are Ukrainians carrying this out. And what is happening is Russia and the power of propaganda, the power of social media. In fact, even today, Ukraine had to come out with a message. And it's on every social media here inside Ukraine. It's on every channel. Do not fall for the scam. We will never offer you money to do anything. Don't fall for any of these scams. So people that are falling for this, or they are pro-Russian sympathizers looking
Hmm.
for a way to make $1,000 because that's what they're being paid. They're
Hmm.
literally being paid $1,000. You pick up a briefcase, you pick up a bag, you take it to the mobilization center, you set it down, you walk off. It is then remotely detonated by a Russian agent who could be there or could be anywhere. It's almost reminding me of months ago when, of course, a much different scale, but when Israel did the pager thing
Yeah.
against Hamas. It's unbelievable what is happening, but this is the propaganda game playing right now because, to be honest, Ukraine is getting a little bit of positive momentum going on their mobilization.
Hmm.
And now Russia wants to use this to knock that down, make people afraid. They're trying to sow fear and hatred into the mobilization process. That is why when you look at social media and you see, oh, well, they grabbed this person off the streets of Odessa and threw them
Hmm.
into a van. Then they beat that person. Oh, they broke that guy's leg. Guys, most of the time, that is Russian propaganda spreading. Yes, these types of narratives have happened, but they are not the norm. They
Hmm.
are far and few between, but they will pounce on it. And now, as we're entering into this unknown phase of what is happening here in Ukraine in the war, Russia is seeing this as an opportunity to knock down that mobilization, to bring fear to that mobilization. I can tell you, Zhenya sitting beside me over here, he himself has to check in at the mobilization office every Friday.
Hmm.
So we're out running aid, helping soldiers right now. He
Hmm.
can't be there. So his wife has power of attorney. And just on his appointment day the other day, she sent a picture. She was standing there at the mobilization center, and outside the door and in the building, there's probably 50, 75 guys that just huddle around and they stand out the door and they wait for the person to come out and begin to call names. That's how it happens. So
Hmm.
anybody can walk up, drop a bag, and keep walking. So
Yeah.
now who wants to go to the mobilization office? It's a target. So
Right.
it is a strategy that Russia is using to destabilize the mobilization process, but I can confirm 100% from the top source, it is Russian activity using pro Russian sympathizers or desperate Ukrainians that are in dire need of money and are sitting on
Hmm.
the fence for what they support. They are contacted and contracted through social media. They are then delivered the tools of the trade at an appointed time. They drop the bag, they walk away, and it's a remote detonation. What happened in Rivne um, was the person that had accepted the $1,000 to do it, the detonator actually blew them up.
Oh,
When
wow.
they dropped the bag, they blew it instantly. So actually, the saboteur was the one who took the brunt of the damage, and it's just it's a big story right now because Ukraine needing to get mobilization solved. Even today, you're hearing the news inside Ukraine come out. Well, guys, get ready. We may be looking at 21. We may be looking at 23. We don't know what we're looking at. Um, so anything Russia can do to destabilize is what they're doing.
Do you have any sense of the bit about the elections here? General Kellogg was saying, "Hey, we need to have um, we need to have elections in 2025." I mean, in democracies in the United States, we have elections. Okay, yeah, we even did in the Civil War, and Poroshenko was coming out saying, "No, this is a bad thing. We need unity right now." And so I think if I understand it correctly, the idea is no, we need to have a ceasefire and then elections shortly right thereafter. And so it's pushing for both of those things simultaneously, as if we're just doing what's good for democracy.
I will be happy to speak to that because I've already had that conversation with another high ranking person
Hmm.
who is actually not a Zelensky fan. In fact, he was in the Poroshenko world,
Hmm.
very high ranking. In fact, the gentleman I was talking to has already met Donald Trump. So,
Hmm.
this kind of level. Here's what he said. That is exactly what Russia wants to happen.
Mm.
They want a ceasefire. They want to call for an election. That is why you keep hearing Putin claim the narrative Zelensky is illegitimate. He can't sign. We can't negotiate with him. There is no way he is not a legitimately elected president, which is none of that is true. That is all propaganda. He is legitimately the elected president under martial law, the
Hmm.
extension of that during wartime. When you begin to talk about this, all we're doing, not you, but people in general,
Hmm.
we are just pushing the Russian Putin narrative. This is exactly what Vladimir Putin wants. Now, let me conclude by saying the gentleman I was talking to who was on Team Poroshenko, he says, listen, if there was an election tomorrow, I'm not voting for Zelensky. I am not a Zelensky fan,
Hmm.
but he is my president. He is the commander in chief, and he is doing a good job, and I support him as the president and the commander in chief. But there is a time and place for everything.
Yeah.
So this is how Ukraine in general is looking at it. Now, I want you to think about another thing, and I actually had this conversation with him. Um, how do you have a fair election? Ju-
You have to have control over all your polling stations, is for one thing, and that's not going to be able to be had until after Russia's off all that territory. And yeah.
That's exactly right. How do you you know? Okay, let's look at the city of Pokrovsk, which is under such intense pressure right now, and it's very hot and heavy down on Prokrovsk on the west and the eastern side. It's tough up in Sumy right now with a lot of DRG activity. It's tough in Kupiansk right now. The you saw the video the other night of the missiles coming down in Odessa. It's tough, guys, everywhere. Russia indiscriminately killing people nonstop. Just yesterday, they dropped a drone on a little yellow bus riding around
Mhm.
Kherson with kids and grannies on it. So, how do you have a fair election? You know, when you are having so much pressure put on, and yeah, okay, so Pokrovsk is ours. How do people even go to the polling station? How do
Mhm.
they vote? So
Yeah.
it's completely a farce. That is why even people that are, and I don't want to call this person pro Poroshenko, but they're pro something.
Mhm.
But right now they're pro Zelensky as their commander in chief, but they
Sure.
would vote a different way, most likely in a general election when it's time for a general election.
Yeah.
It, the bottom line is it's a Putin talking point. It's exactly what he wants.
So I don't think he wants to conclude the war. I think he wants to sow discord and make it more tricky. But I mean, that's my read at least.
I would completely agree with that. He doesn't want to end the war. And I will tell you this. I was just with a commander who is fighting in a very tough area. Just had dinner with him. And when he was leaving, I asked him one simple question. I wanted to know at this point, when we see the the immense amount of pressure that the front lines are under due to the nonstop onslaught of Russian soldiers that just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. And we also see political destabilization in the world. And of course, they're asking me all about Donald Trump. They're asking me about EU. They're asking me about Panama. I mean, you name it, they're
Mhm.
asking me, man. They just want to know because it will eventually affect them, and they know that.
Right. Yeah, that's
Some.
that's right. So all those things, yeah, I'll be talking about that in my three big stories. It's actually more than that tonight, but all these things that are happening in Panama, Canada, Mexico, whatever, it all relates to what's going on because it's having an effect on the ability to negotiate and what's going on in Ukraine. So even if it seems like, why are you talking about that? It's important to understand the big picture.
Well, I can tell you the Ukrainian perspective right now, and then I'll get back to what the commander said because everyone needs to hear this. Um, They said, Greg, it's kind of interesting. And they don't have, they're not Americans, they're Ukrainians. They're just observing from outside. They go, it's just kind of interesting. We've been in a war for 3 years, and the new president comes in, and it looks to us like all he does is attack his allies.
Mm,
We're over here fighting the axis of evil,
mhm,
which is Russia and North Korea and Iranian shaheeds. And he's going after Canada and Panama and Mexico, and we're just so confused. We thought
mhm.
there's a war going on, and I said, guys, just be patient. There's American policies and promises and different things, and we didn't, of course, get into politics because it's way even beyond my understanding. But I said, it is an interesting perspective you have there.
Yeah,
And be a little patient because all of these things are going to connect together somehow. Um, Especially when he begins to talk about the EU. I said, because you're
yeah,
talking about dominoes beginning to fall in a big way. And they looked at me and said, okay, so is it going to be positive or negative for Ukraine? I said, honestly, guys, I don't know. I'm believing for and hoping for positive, and that's what we fight for. And that's when I asked the question. I said, well, so let me ask you a question because it's great for me to understand this. Um, and this is a commander, really good commander. I said, what is your today, after 3 years of war, basically the transitions in the world? What is your definition of victory for Ukraine? He sat there for about 5 seconds and he thought, and he looked right at me and he said, victory for Ukraine is we absolutely remove the invader from all of our lands. And I am specifically speaking our 1991 sovereign borders.
mhm,
That is victory. It was not freeze it. Okay, let them have Lugansk, let them have
mhm.
Donetsk, give us back Zaporizhia. No, it was, I mean, point blank. I was I wasn't shocked at that answer because it's tough over here, but I was encouraged to hear that answer. They're man,
Yeah.
they're hammered down, man.
I would say, yeah, and that's good that they have that perspective. And from a broader geopolitical perspective, it would also be an defanging the aggressor so that they can't go after the Baltics or wherever else they might be interested in going to next. That's not Ukraine's job. That's the rest of the world's job to make sure that that happens through Ukraine largely, but in general to make sure that that happens. So, okay,
Correct. I will tell you this, just because we moved from the bombings at the recruitment centers, and I gave you a little bit of insight on the front lines. Um, I'll tell you, it's one of the other things Ukraine is really watching over here right now, because we are hearing the rumors, we're hearing the conversations. Well, parts of the Trump team already talking to parts of Putin's team, and maybe there's going to be a meeting in Saudi Arabia. Maybe there's going to be a meeting over here or there between Putin and Trump, and all the Ukrainians. This is what they're saying. Okay. Um, and where will Zelensky be?
yeah, yeah, no deal without Zelensky involved.
And
Sure.
where will Zelensky be?
Yeah.
Exactly. And they're watching it very closely.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. All right, Greg. Hey, thanks, man. I really
Hey, man,
appreciate
thank you.
the feedback and the inside understanding of what's going on, especially with this issue with the recruitment centers and anything beyond that as well. You stay safe while you're
Yes, sir.
traveling. All right.
Appreciate you. Appreciate all of you guys. And have a good evening or afternoon or whatever it is for you.
All
We'll
right.
catch
Take
you
care.
later. All
Bye
right. Bye
bye.
bye.